What if the unthinkable happened? Terrorist attacks inside the American homeland by the Islamic State. From New York Times best-selling novelist Joel C. Rosenberg comes his most chilling political thriller yet, Without Warning. Without Warning is one of the must-read thrillers of 2017. One reviewer writes, "The jaw-dropping ending alone is worth the price of admission." Without Warning, available now from joelrosenberg.com.
Joel's with us here, and welcome back. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you, Gordon. Great to be with you.
Well, your books tend to mirror the headlines that are about to come, and let's just start off with a current headline, the rise of anti-Semitism right here in the United States, which I thought was unthinkable, but now is not just thinkable, it's actually happening. What do you think is behind that?
Well, I don't think, let's start with what we don't think. I don't think that this is related to President Trump. I mean, people are trying to tag him as having inspired this. Look, his daughter converted to Judaism.
Yeah,
Jared Kushner is an Orthodox Jew. He loves this guy and is putting him in charge of Middle East peace negotiations.
Yeah, his daughter is an Orthodox Jew. We've got to remember that.
Exactly.
Sabbath-observing Orthodox.
Absolutely. This is President Trump has been, a friend of Prime Minister Netanyahu. David Friedman, who's I think going to be the new ambassador to Israel, is an Orthodox Jew and a close friend of the president. So it's not that. But I do think that dark forces, anti-Semites, sense a moment. I don't think it's related to the president. I think it's a prophetic moment. I think we're going to see a rise in anti-Semitism. We beat it back. But we have to remember, at some point, 5 million American Jews are heading to Israel. Like Ezekiel 38:39 says, every Jew is going to return to the land of Israel. We just did ourselves. We didn't do it because of anti-Semitism. But most American Jews, they're thinking, why would I move to Israel? I love Israel, but, we're not fleeing from something. So I think there's the Bible doesn't say exactly how it happened, but I suspect we are going to be in for a hard road, and it's important for Christians to stand in solidarity with Jews, but also Muslims who are being attacked unfairly. I think we're seeing some darkness start to emerge in this country.
That's one of the themes you're bringing out, that as Americans we need to recognize that it's the 10% minority within Islam that is driving the jihad, and they're actually at war with their own Muslim communities.
That's right. That's right. And we're going to be releasing some fact sheets over the next few days on my website that look at the data. The vast majority of Muslims, about 90%, according to the polling data, have no support for terrorism against civilians. But there is a 7 to 10% minority that may not all be involved in terrorism, but they do support the Islamic State and its violence. They do support suicide bombings. So that is dangerous because it's true, and the president should say, yes, we face radical Islamic terrorism. He's the first president ever to say that. President Bush didn't. President Obama didn't. But in saying that, that's shorthand. He has the opportunity and the responsibility to define it and to say 90% of the Muslim world we are not at war with. 10% does support this, 7 to 10, and we need to work with our Muslim allies against this, including our American Muslim friends who are not our enemy. And as Christians, we have to be super careful with our language, to love our neighbors and to recognize that this is a problem, but it's a problem that Muslims are worried about also, and we need to join forces.
And that's the reason Bush and Obama didn't want, I think Obama was real singular, didn't want to tag it radical Islam.
Yes, and so that motive, I think, is right. We don't want to accidentally, inadvertently, make it seem like all Muslims are our threat.
Well, let me play the other side.
Okay.
And the other side is the Palestinian Authority actually rewards the families of suicide bombers financially.
It's horrible, and it needs to stop.
And this is not new and not just isolated to them.
Right.
Before the invasion of Iraq, Saddam Hussein supported the families.
$25,000 bonuses if you
we're gonna
have a suicide bomber in your family.
If you do
it's
this.
Horrible.
And, I still have the words of Osama bin Laden. I mean, that first interview after the attack where a journalist goes to him in a cave, and his first question is, what are the mullahs saying in Mecca and Medina? and he was given the assurance that they considered a righteous act. Given that, isn't there a fundamental problem with Islam?
Well, you can get into the theology, and you have people like the King of Jordan and the President of Egypt will say to you, as Muslims, this is a misreading of the text. Others say, no, that's exactly what the text says, and we should do it. I'm going to let the Muslims argue amongst themselves about the theology. As a practical policy matter, you ally yourself with the vast majority against the violent minority, and you work together. That's how we're going to win it long term. But it's a serious problem, because it's true to say that the vast majority don't believe this, but 10% of 1.6 billion people is 160 million people. That's half the population of the United States. If they decide to create their own country, let's call it the Islamic Republic of Radicalistan, this would be the 9th largest country on the planet, larger than Russia. So to say that the vast majority aren't supportive of violence is true and fair, but the magnitude of the threat against us cannot be underestimated, and that's what both the novel is about, and I think that's what the president and his team, which I think is very impressive team, that's what they're saying, but they need to use the podium, the bully pulpit, to begin to explain to the American people. Those of us who know this issue, we think, well, the country already gets this, but no president has ever talked about it. So it's time, and that's part of my message on Capitol Hill last week. I met with people in the administration several weeks ago, and that's what I'm going to continue to encourage them. Don't assume that the country has thought this all through, because no president ever talked about it.
And don't assume the country is even educated on what the basic tenets of Islam are.
That's right.
We should be at this point in time, but I think sadly we're not.
That's right.
And so we don't even know how to engage the debate. My point is, if we're not engaging the debate, and I think this war on terror, you're not going to win it with bullets. You have to win it with ideas.
That's right. And I would say, therefore, there's two tracks. There's the government side. You know, Romans 13 speaks of, you know, the government doesn't wield the sword for nothing. We have a national security element. That's the role and responsibility of the government to keep us safe. The church's job is to go take the gospel and convert Muslims, if the Lord is gracious. That's how you're going to change, ultimately, long-term, radicals to being people who are peace-loving. It's not going to come because the State Department cooks up some new strategy. They should have some strategy, but let's be honest, the church has the answer. And we need to work on separate tracks. We don't want the government to try to convert people, but the church can't say, well, it's the government's job to deal with radical Islam. Our job is to what? Is to go love them and reach them with the gospel.
And you're living that out. I still don't understand how a Messianic believer, a resident of Israel, gets to meet with the King of Jordan.
Divine intervention. I can't explain it. The king should have banned me from his country reading novels where ISIS is trying to kill him and destroy the kingdom of Jordan. But he read it. He seemed to be intrigued with it enough to say, to invite my wife and I to come for 5 days and to meet with him and to have lunch with him. I had a 2.5-hour dinner in his private palace the night before I left. He sent us on his own helicopter to go meet with generals that are keeping Jordan safe from Daesh, from the Islamic State. It's the most amazing week of my life, and it's hard to describe, but it tells me that when a Jewish evangelical Zionist U.S.-Israeli citizen gets to go meet with a descendant of Muhammad, God is up to something interesting, which shows that we don't have to agree on everything, but we can show love and respect to our neighbors. You know, it was Jesus as a Jew in Israel who said, love your neighbors, and then went to Jordan, right? And what did he do? He didn't try to work on the Roman government in Jordan. When he crossed the Jordan, he liberated people from demon possession. He preached the gospel, and he sent that man up in the northern part of Jordan who begged him, let me come with you to Israel and be part of your team. No, you go back and tell your family and your villages about me. That's the hope, and only the church can do it. We don't want government to be involved in that, and we need to love our neighbors and our enemies by respecting them, working together on policy, but then being bold and loving, compassionate about the gospel. And we're trying
Amen.
to do that with our own ministry, the Joshua Fund.
And you're doing a good job.
We're
and
trying.
you have a new
We're trying.
page turner, Without Warning. It's available nationwide, wherever books are sold. And Joel, thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you, Gordon.
I think it's important. I think it's
appreciate
prophetic what you're doing.
Thank you. God
All
bless
right.
you.